Hey, I'm Gareth from Pod Cameras, and today we're running through 5 tips to make your videos more cinematic. Okay, so tip number 1 is you're going to want to be shooting at 24 frames per second. Now, this is just going to make your videos look cinematic. It's the most cinematic frame rate to use. Now, films in cinemas and things like that are at 24 frames a second, so that's partly why, but that's the frame rate you're going to want to use. Now, if you don't film in 24 frames a second, if you film at 30 or 60, you're still going to want to export at 24 frames a second to get the most filmic look to your footage. Tip number 2 is to stabilize your footage. So you can either use something like a gimbal or a stabilizer, or if you're gonna shoot handheld, try out some different techniques. So just do short shots where you don't have to walk or anything like that, because that is always gonna be shaky. Or do something like have the camera strap around your neck, pull the camera away from you so you get tension in the camera strap, and use that to kind of stabilize your camera a little bit so you can get movement. Another thing you can do is have your camera on a tripod and just lean the tripod slightly to get shots like that. That's going to stabilize your footage. But generally, a smoother shot is going to look more cinematic. Obviously, things like the DJI Ronin S or things like that are going to really help out in terms of getting that stable, smooth, cinematic footage, and it looks so good. But if you are shooting handheld, try out some of those tips. And this actually kind of brings me on to tip 2.5, I guess, so which is to have movement in your shots. It just makes them so much more dynamic. I've touched on it before in previous videos, but adding a bit of movement just adds so much, especially if you're trying to make it look cinematic. You can draw the viewer in, you can enhance the story by having movement in there as well, and it just makes the whole shot look nicer, more professional, and certainly more cinematic. So tip number 3 is to use slow motion. Now, I totally understand this can be overdone. I've definitely been guilty of that, of just putting everything in slow motion because it's very exciting. But if you shoot in a higher frame rate, so 60 frames a second, I love to shoot in 120 frames a second because it just gives you this super cinematic look to things. It looks really, really good. And then you play it back at 24 frames a second, you're gonna get slow motion. Now this can look really, really cinematic. It actually smooths out your shots as well, so it plays into what we were talking about before, but it just looks really, really good. It can look quite dramatic, and it can just add a lot to it. Now, like I say, it can be overdone and then it can actually become boring, but generally slow motion can look really, really cinematic. And just enhance your videos so much, especially if you're trying to make a point with it. Just make sure not to overdo it. Okay, tip number 4 is a bit of a bigger one, and that's color correction and color grading. Now, this is something that's gonna set your videos apart, so they just look so much more professional. It just takes them up to a next level. So once you've got all your clips in Premiere or whatever you're gonna be using, you're gonna wanna start color correcting them. And this basically means getting them to all somewhat match, so they look like they were taken at the same time, the same lighting, the same color temperature and things like that, so they're all roughly matching in the tone. Now, obviously this doesn't apply if you've got different locations and things like that, that's fine, but if it's in one location that's supposed to be at the same time, then generally they need to match in the kind of tone that you have. So for example, you wouldn't want one clip to be quite dark and full of contrast, and then the next clip, which is in the exact same place, to be quite light, and then there's no contrast. You want to kind of have them matching and looking pretty similar. So once your clips all match, you can begin color grading. Now, this is something that's going to completely set your videos apart from other ones, and it just makes them look really, really professional. So for example, a really popular color grade at the moment is orange and teal. So you have orange in, for example, the highlights, and teal in the shadows, and you get this kind of filmic look to things. That's a really popular one at the moment, but you can do whatever you like. You can go for quite a heavy color grade if you want to have a particular tone to things. You can tell a story through the colors you're using, so you can make it seem cold, you can make it seem warm, and there's all kinds of things you can do. Now, it's easy to overdo it, so you have to be a little subtle with the things you're going to do and the way you're going to build that look. But once you've done that and you've affected your whole video is going to have this one look that's going to look really, really nice, and it just sets it apart and makes it super cinematic. Okay, so tip number 5 is music and sound design. Now, this is a big one, but we'll start with music. So you want to make sure that the music you pick for your video is going to enhance the tone that you're trying to convey. So music can add emotion to your video, and it can really change the feeling that the viewer gets when they're watching it. You can totally transform your videos with the right music, adding feeling and emotion and just taking them to the next level. The other part of this is sound design, and this is huge. So when you've got something on screen like the ocean, you want to be able to hear the ocean. You want to be able to hear the forest, the sounds of the forest, the sounds of birds when you're in a meadow, the sounds of the pebbles as someone's walking across them, if that's what's on screen, or on grassland, or anything like that. It's important to be able to hear that because it just adds so much. Now, generally people watching probably wouldn't be able to tell you that that's why they like the video, but I guarantee if you've taken the time to do some sound design, to add in those layers, they will absolutely like the video so much more. They might not be able to explain exactly why it is, but that is why. They will love the video so much more because you took the time to do that sound design. It just fills all the senses. So you've got the music, you've got the video, and then you've got the sound as well. And it just absolutely enhances everything. Now, it doesn't have to be crazy, but just some subtle sounds built in just creates this huge atmosphere for the video, and you get this soundscape for people to enjoy with the music and with the video. Now, generally what I'll do on a shoot, I don't record audio with the video. I will take a separate sound recorder and I'll just go around to all the points of interest that I'll record sound from that I can add into the video later. So for example, if we're down by the beach, I'll go down to the sea and I'll just record the sound of the sea for a few minutes so I can add that in later. I'll record the sound of me walking across pebbles so I can add that in later. If we're in the forest, I'll just have my sound recorder out and just record the sounds of the forest. This is a great way to be able to build your sound design, and as you do that, you create your own library of sounds anyway, which is really, really handy. But that's a great way to be able to get your sounds and then just pop them in the video. It's definitely worth exploring sound design because it just takes your videos to that final step of being just really professional, really nice. And in terms of trying to make them cinematic, it really, really makes a huge, huge difference. So those are our 5 tips for making your videos more cinematic. Now there's loads more tips that we could talk about, and obviously these are just opinion, but hopefully that's going to help you make more cinematic videos. If you like the video, make sure to hit the like button. If you're not subscribed already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'll see you in the next video, and as always, thanks for watching.